Chapter 161. I must have been rude. Chanton Susu spoke in a rather slow tone, but there was no word of apology. He knew it was rude, but he didn't regret it. Come in, Gallihan said, pointing to the sofa in the office. Thank you. Sitting face to face with Chanton Susu, Gallihan suddenly realized that his office felt narrow. It was not really like that. It was just that the ordinary office captured the large size and presence of Chanton Susu. Chanton Susu, who looked around Gallihan's office with curious eyes, told Gallihan, I thought at least you come to greet me once as Lord of Susu. It's hard to see your face, Lord Gallihan Lombardi. Chanton Sisu was now berating Gallihan for not greeting him first. Cheshire was awarded to Gallihan and became independent, no longer a part of the Sisu, but it was still a territory surrounded by Sisu land. Of course, I understand that you'll be very busy working with Cheshire Estates and Gallihan clothing store that I spread across the continent. Thank you. It's only when you're less busy, isn't it? Chanton Sisu's lips drew a smile, but Gallihan only became more uncomfortable. That was the atmosphere of Lord Susu himself as an individual, but above all, the fact that he was a person of the Empress made Gallihan nervous. Nowadays, the Empress introduced Chanton Sisu everywhere she went, as if there should be no one in the Empire who did who did not know that the Lord of the West was a close aide to the Empress. To be honest, Chanton Sisu was a very reluctant person to Gallihan. Sure enough, the Lord of Sisu asked, I heard that a port is opening in Cheshire, is that correct? For a moment, Gallihan resisted the urge to say no. The port of Cheshire was so precious, and Gallihan's instincts were saying Chanton Sisu was the one who would threaten it. That's right. Inevitably, Gallihan's words stretched out. Then Cheshire Port would be the starting point for inland supplies to move along the river. Lord of Sisu was already grasping everything. That's right, Gallihan answered one bit slower. Then Chanton Sisu said, lifting one eyebrow, but why do I know that now? I don't know what you're talking about. If inland supplies are to reach the Cheshire Port, they must all pass through the land of West Sisu. Rattle. Gallihan paused with the sound of his heart sinking. The Cheshire Port is surrounded by the land of West Sisu. In other words, it was up to him, the owner of Sisu, to decide whether the goods could go into Cheshire. It was a pretty nice threat. Those green eyes, gradually turning into hostility, asked, looking directly at Chanton Sisu. In what sense should I accept that? What do you think it means? Chanton Sisu said, looking for a moment at Gallihan, who did not say anything with a stubborn face. It looks like you've worked hard with the investment from the Pellet Corporation. It was an awful dry yet slow tone. Chanton Sisu leaned forward, resting his knees with his elbows. With his elbow, a large shadow moved along with him. One word from me could turn it out to be a bubble. There was silence in Gallian's office. On top of the tight tension, Chanton Sisu slipped in his energy. The overwhelming feeling of commanding hundreds of imperial knights overwhelmed Gallihan. Under the same circumstances as Vice Lombardi, Gallihan's older brother, Nikim could not breathe properly. Later, he even hiccups in surprise. Joy flashed through Chanton Sisu's eyes, recalling that time. However, what do you want? Gallian Lombardi asked, without hostility. The one who was surprised was Chanton Sisu. He took his energy out again and stared at Gallihan. Looking at the complexion, it doesn't mean that he wasn't affected. The enmity in bright green eyes has never abated at all. How can you be sure that there's something I want? Otherwise, you didn't have to come and take the trouble to break my spirit, but you could have locked up the gate of Susu so that the goods wouldn't come in after the port was opened. That could do a bigger disservice to Cheshire. Gallihan said calmly, so stop being childish and tell me what you want. Sometimes rumors are true. Gallihan slightly frowned at the word rumor. I don't know what that rumor is, but please tell me your terms quickly. I have a place to go. Did it say that today is the birthday of the Lord of Lombardy? He doesn't hold banquets or accept gifts every year. He only gathers family members and vassals and spends them simply. Then you better hurry. Chanton Sisu nodded, and he said, looking straight at Gallihan, priority to allow Sisu's ship to enter the Cheshire port at any time. How? Gallihan was a little surprised. Of course, he thought he would charge a toll to pass through Susu's land. There is only one reason why priority is required. Do you intend to build your own ship? If it's used frequently, it's not like we can't make it. So what are the things that Susu is trying to bring to the east? Gallihan, who was thinking for a moment, said, you intend to take the grain of Susu to the east and sell it, and that's impersonally. Chanton Sisu replied with a shrug. Did Lord Lombardi know that the grain of Sisu is sold at the lowest price in the empire? We understand that the production volume is high and the price is low. Right, and I can't wait to see what the farmers West Sisu have produced with their blood and sweat being sold at the bargain prices. Chanton Sisu's voice was chilling. Then Gallihan asked, so you joined hands with Angenes in the West to easily target the West, where there is always a lack of food? Lord of Sisu smiled and replied, I won't deny it. Over the past few months, the people of the West have been accustomed to the relatively inexpensive provisions of our West Sisu, and you're thinking of going to advance to the East through water trade that's starting in Cheshire. Because of you opening up a new market called East Lord Gallihan Lombardi. Chanton Sisu, it's not normal. Gallihan swallowed dry saliva from the tension inside. He underestimated him just because he was a former Imperial Knight commander. He's the one who used to grab the sword, but when he met him in person, he was like a bear. He's big and slow, so he looks dull at first glance, but he's actually very sharp and has a strong instinct. So accept my offer, Lord Lombardi. Don't just let me stand in your way. He won't disturb him if he just listens to what he asks. It was a sweet temptation not to turn him into an enemy. Gallihan, staring at Chanton Sisu for a moment, nodded and rose from his seat, and he said, asking for a handshake, I'll do that. A detailed description of the birth charge will be sent to the mansion as soon as possible. Chanton Sisu, who was holding Gallihan's hand, satisfactorily stopped. Birth fee? Then did you try to get a ship for free? Don't worry, Sisu is our neighbor, so we'll make it much cheaper. Chanton Susu's sharp eyes glared at Gallihan, but Gallihan did not shy away. Chanton Susu and his father Lulak Lombardi were similar. He should not be weak against this kind of strong man. He has to put his head up a little bit and face it. That's the way to survive. Fortunately, Chanton Susu, who sees Gallihan, spread laughter around his eyes and said, Lord of Cheshire says so, and I must believe it. All right, I'll wait for your call. Chanton Susu has left the office. Left alone, Gallihan collapsed on the sofa. Well, his heart thumped and a tired sigh came out. He seemed to have managed to protect the Cheshire port from predators. Then he remembered the words that came and went during the conversation. And I can't wait to see what the farmers West Sisu have produced with their blood and sweat being sold at the bargain prices. He had lot on his mind. Isn't he such a bad person? Galliahan, who was washing his face dry, muttered sickly. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The Lord of Lombardy's birthday can't really pass quietly. Though it's a small dinner, the Eleanor Hall, a huge banquet hall of Lombardy's mansion, was filled with only direct family and vassal family. Now it was time for people to walk around freely and talk after dinner. Next to Lula, the owners of the vassal family, and Shannonette and Vise sat around to talk about one thing or another, as the North stabilizes the price of the mineral. At this time, Lombardy should also invest a little more in Western real estate. Lulak twirled the glass, listening to the conversation in and out of one ear. There is a limit to procrastination. Now the time was approaching to point out a successor. Lulak looked intently at the vacancy of Shannonette, Vise, and Galliahan. Shannonette will, of course, be a great householder. There is no problem under imperial law, as she protected Lombardy's mansion, and the twins received Lombardy's name. If she had not repeatedly said, I have no intention of becoming the next Lombardy householder, Shannonette would have been a perfect successor. And Vise, if you look at it, you'll see it. The Western tourism business of Angenes is on the verge of stepping up. As Vise said, whether the business will succeed or not depends on the future. Lulak's gaze finally reached Galliahan's vacancy. He didn't think this day would come, but it was Galliahan, the youngest, that Lulak's heart is most swayed these days. He knew his intelligence from the time he grew up, but he ran a Gallihan clothing store and proved himself that his head was not just a display. He also showed his boldness as a lord when he recently built a port on the Cheshire estate. But the biggest reason was not Gallihan's intelligence, nor his experience as a lord. That's right. Grandfather, a bright and cheerful voice awakened Lulak's thoughts. Happy birthday, Grandpa. It was his granddaughter, Florentia. End of chapter 161. Chapter 162. Dad is late. He's not a person who will be late for an important event like my grandfather's birthday. Don't tell me something happened. He must be avoiding the rain anywhere. Don't worry too much, Tia. Lorraine patted me on the shoulder and said, Rain? I raised my head and looked out the window. It was raining quite a lot before I knew it. Since Tia had an accident last time, there's been order from grandfather. People in Lombardy should stop their carriages and avoid heavy rain or snow. The twins pushed dessert and fruit in front of me and said so. How do you know my taste? Everything is my favorite. Yeah, I guess so. I took a piece of fruit with a fork and mumbled and looked toward the top seat. There were a lot of people gathered next to my grandfather, but no one actually talked to him. Even though we gathered to celebrate my grandfather's birthday, I feel sorry for the sight of the island floating alone in the noisy sea. Where are you going, Tia? When I woke up, Gilly, who was putting honey and milk in my tea, asked with their eyes wide open, I have something for my grandfather. I'll be back. I approached my grandfather with the purse that I had already brought. Grandpa, but grandfather couldn't hear my voice because he was lost in thought. I spoke in a rather loud voice on purpose. Happy birthday, Grandpa. Thanks, Tia. Only then do warm brown eyes look at me. I sat next to my grandfather and said while holding his hand, Let's have a healthy birthday feast 100 more times, Grandpa. Huh, kid. Grandfather smiled and patted my hair as if to make sure he didn't hate my spoiled behavior. I know I shouldn't give you a birthday present, but this is a little different, so please accept it. I took a red envelope out of my purse and handed it to my grandfather. What is this, Tia? Invitation to the Pellet Corporation banquet a week later that will be held at the riverside in the capital, Grandpa. Whoa, you mean having a banquet by the river? Grandfather opened the envelope with curious eyes and checked the invitation. The weather is so nice these days. It's a bit of a waste to stay inside in this season, so I prepared something special. Prepare? Are you saying that Tia prepared this banquet? I already know that the lords around us and the people of Lombardy are listening to our conversation. Everyone stopped talking one by one when they heard that I was directly involved in the pellet business. Well, it's time to get out of the role of Clarivan's disciple. I replied with a nod. Yes, Grandpa. I even picked the envelope for the invitation myself. Look, it's red. Huh, I see. Actually, it's not a general banquet, but a place to introduce the new business of the pallet company. And since I contributed a little to the business, I think it would be really nice if Grandpa can come. Oh, you did? Yes, then this grandfather should go. Wow, when Grandpa comes, everyone's eyes will be round. The value of a banquet depends on the guests who attend it. If the Lord of Lombardy attends in person, the weight and impact of the banquet will be even heavier. But then a shrill voice was heard. Yes, you must have picked flowers for the banquet. His face was reddish from alcohol. What are you talking about, that drunkard? Vis, who glanced at me, said loudly to grandfather. Father, don't you know how much the construction cost came from Anjanus these days? You should have held this banquet for me, right? Ha ha. These days, Cyril was holding a leash and was a little quiet. In the end, her spoiled dog can't give up his habit, get drunk, and making a mistake with his mouth. Vis, I think you're drinking too much. Even my grandfather, who couldn't see it, spoke low with an unpleasant face. I think I'd rather pick up one of the napkins rolling over on the table, squeeze it into that mouth, and tell the servants to drag him. Thinking of the vassals who were watching, I took a small deep breath and calmed my heart. Even if I fight Vis in a place like this, I will just spit in my face, so I have to be patient. But the Anjanas are short of money. But I asked them to pay you well. A man should have a strong blow like me. However, Anjana's family is short of funds, but when I asked them, they paid for it. A man should have a strong shoot like me. You're talking bullshit like a shoot. These words touched something inside me. I said with a smile on my face, whoever hears it would think that Anjanas is giving our Lombardy a lot of money that we don't have. It's too late. It's so late and they only give half of it, but you show off like that. Noisy, you don't know the topic and you're arrogant. Vis glared at me with an explicitly unpleasant look, but he cut his words when he noticed my grandfather's hardened facial expression, and he spoke as if to teach me. You know only one thing and not two. Western development is not the end. This is not the end of Western development. In other words, if this tourism project goes well, it is said they will lease the construction from Lombardy again. It's better for us to cover half of the construction cost. What should I do? There won't be another construction. Vis continued to chatter, licking his tongue. It's good for a family to help each other, I replied, tilting my head. That's weird. When did Anjanus become Lombardy's vassal family? What do you mean by a family? Haha, the few remaining people chuckled. It's a very funny joke, whether it's the size of the family or the location or the extent of the property. Lombardy and Anjanus, as Vis said, if they want to be a real family, it has no choice but to come under us. What a vassal family? But Vis was furious. Anjanas is my wife's family. It's like a family with Lombardy. Then he said as if I deserved to know. No wonder you lack affection for Lombardy because you will be someone from another family when you get married. Craps, I heard the sound of a string breaking in my head. What did you just say? I stared straight at Viz. My affection for Lombardy, not enough? Me? Am I Florentia Lombardi, compared to you, Viz? I sprang up from my seat. The chair fell and the loud noise rang out at the banquet hall, and many people were looking this way. I approached Viz one step at a time, who was sitting with a surprised face. It's bearable that Viz's stupidity caused Lombardi to suffer quite a bit of damage. It is also negligible when Viz says silly things. But what's wrong with my affection for Lombardi? I stood right in front of Viz, looking down from above. Viz looked 100 times more like an idiot than usual. I opened my purse with one corner of my mouth slightly raised. Then I put the thing I took out on the table in front of the Viz, so that it slammed once again. Invitation. It was a red invitation that I brought to give to other people who attended my grandfather's birthday banquet. I kept looking down at Viz and said clearly, one word at a time, please, make sure you can come to see it. I'll have to see your face with my own eyes the moment Clarivan announces his new business. I slipped the last word to get Viz to come. If you don't come, you might have to sit still because you have nothing to say at the social gathering for a while. Don't regret it later. At that moment, I could tell by the shaking of his stupid eyes, Viz will come to the banquet on his own with this invitation. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. A week later, the capital was in full swing this evening with a banquet held by the Pellet Corporation, but Lignite Lumen was a little far from there. It was the southernmost rural town in Lombardy's territory, Menri. The banquet held by Caravan Palette is a hot topic every time, so it's a bit unfortunate. It was an inevitable choice to check the new information as soon as possible. Are you here? Lignite arrived in front of the largest mansion in Menri. Even though it was the largest mansion in a quiet rural village, it was smaller than the townhouse in the capital. It was a place that was well organized and gave a neat and cozy feeling. What should I do? It's already sunset. Though it's a little late to knock on the door of a strange house, Lignite hesitated for a moment and got off the horse. After roughly brushing off the dirt off his clothes and with his hands, he walked to the front door of the mansion. Look, again, focusing on when the Pellet Corporation was first established, especially find out where the former owner of the Pellet Corporation building. Not long ago, Perez ordered it out of the blue. Lignite sighed softly, wondering if it was about Clarivan Pellet. What's wrong with the former owner of all of a sudden? Check if it's Clarivan Pellet himself who bought the building, the actual buyer, not the paper buyer. At that moment, Lignite felt as if he had been bitten in the back of his head. Why didn't I think of that before? From the beginning, Pellet was the only owner of the company, without any other investors. So he simply thought that Pellet was a great person and went over. But now that he thinks about it, it was a little weird. Before the establishment of the Pellet Corporation, Clarivan Pellet was just one of the many employees working for the Lombardi family. Of course, since he was in charge of housekeeping and the education of successors, he would have received a lot of salaries. It would not have been enough to buy a whole building in the city. But no bank in the empire showed any sign of Clarivan Pellet taking out loans. That was guaranteed by Lignite, who investigated in person. Then whose money was worth buying in a building? Was the building where Pellet Corporation was built really owned by Clarivan Pellet? Amid various questions, Lignite knocked on the door of the mansion. Excuse me, are you there? After a while, a middle-aged man in a butler's uniform came out to greet Lignite. Good afternoon. I came to visit Green Barrow, who lived in Lombardy Estate. Can I see him? The butler took a glance at Lignite's entry, not to be rude. It's to make sure it's not a suspicious person. Although not named, polite speech and luxurious-looking clothes proved that the visitor was a nobleman. My master is resting now. Come into the drawing room first. Thank you. Lignite followed the lead and had a strong hunch that he would find the right answer this time. At the same time, Perez, who was giving orders, came to mind, the eyes with strange conviction. End of chapter 162. Chapter 163. The riverside of the capital, where wide water flows gently. Clarivan, standing a little higher, looked down at the nobles gathered at the banquet hall with a cheerful face. Now, when preparing for the banquet, there was no need to worry about what would happen if the invitees didn't come. When it comes to Pellet Corporation's banquet, most of the people tried to attend with invitations from others. As such, the influence of the name Clarivan Pellet in the aristocratic society was great. Clarivan Pellet, the illegitimate son of the famous Romacy Dillard, who had to hide in the shadows, was nowhere now. He was just Clarivan Pellet of the Pellet Corporation and stood tall over the nobles of Lambru Empire. And all of this is thanks to Lady Florentia. He didn't even want to imagine what life would have been like if I hadn't met the light of Florentia Lombardi. Just thinking about it made him dizzy. Clarivan's gaze finally ran into Florentia, a little far away. Clarivan shook his head secretly. Then she greeted Clarivan with a beautiful face and a smile, and pointed to the entrance of the banquet hall with a wink. As he looked over there quickly, he saw Lulak and Romasi Dillard, who had just arrived at the banquet hall. Although it seems to be enjoying the feast leisurely, Florentia was already fully aware of the movements of all the important figures. Clarivan raised his hand slightly above his chest to tell her to leave it to him and hurried up to Lulak. Here you are, Lord. Ah, Clarivan, it's a very beautiful banquet today. It's no waste of the word pellet. Lulak laughed, genuinely pleased. I'm flattered. Then Clarivan looked at Romasi beside Lulak. It's been a long time, Lord of Lombardy stopped. It was a calm and perfectly courteous greeting to others. Clarivan no longer suffers from seeing Romasi Dillard. This was also a change after meeting Florentia. It's a banquet prepared by Lady Florentia, and I can't miss it. Romasi Dillard said so and looked at Clarivan. He was already speculated that this banquet was not the only one Florentia had prepared. Romasi Dillard was one of the few people who knew who the real owner of Pellet Corporation was. You've been taking care of our Tia lately, haven't you? Lulak didn't hate it, but looked at Romasi and said, Haha, did I? The prickly Romasi answered quickly. She's a great person, isn't she? She's still young, but she's as talented as anyone else. It's like I'm looking at the Lord when I was young. Isn't it? Lulak opened his eyes, round, and soon laughed loudly. Yes, our Tia does look a bit like me, yes. However, there was a lingering feeling behind a big smile. Lulak nodded for a moment and thought about something before tapping Clarivan on the shoulder. I won't hold any more busy people. Then see you later. Yes, Lord. Clarivan greeted Lulak politely as he walked into the banquet hall. Afterward, as he greeted the people arriving at the banquet hall one after another, Clarivan kept his eyes on Lulak. And finally, he was seeing Lula greeted by another family who comes late. Having confirmed it, Clarivan stepped toward the podium of the banquet hall. Sir Clarivan, Gallihan and Avenox Lumen, who were talking near the podium, looked at Clarivan. Both of them looked nervous. We're all set. Will you be all right? Gallihan forced himself to smile at Clarivan's question. Avenox also took a short, deep breath and nodded. Clarivan tapped the two on the shoulder, just like Lulak did, and climbed up to the podium. That's all. But the sound of conversations from people in the banquet hall stopped, and the music also stopped. Clarivan's face, as people looked up, had a distinctive, confident smile. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you for your precious time, Clarivan said, slowly scanning the crowd. Now, let's start the feast in earnest. A full-fledged banquet. What else is there? People buzzed around, looking back at each other. Clarivan looked at the crowd for a moment as if he enjoyed such a reaction, then smiled and pointed to the river. Just in time, a large ship was slowly showing up. I'll take you on the ship. The nobles are just a mess. It was excitement and cheers when the splendidly lit ship anchored safely at the pier by the river. He tried to get on the ship. There were many people who saw a ship for the first time in their lives, but at first they were a little scared, but they were as excited as children. As people began to the ship, one by one, music began to flow on the ship. Unlike the music that had been flowing before, the faster and more reddish song was an imperial reinterpretation of Eastern folk songs. The liquor offered has also changed. Red wine was served on the ground, but sparkling champagne and dry white wine were on people's hands on the ship. It was to match the food. What's this? It's a dish called cooked by boiling seafood, a specialty of the eastern part in a citrus sauce. The eyes of those who carefully tasted the food were wide open at the recommendation of the employees. Delicious. That's the first taste I've ever tasted. At that time, a nobleman spoke out. This is Eastern food. East? I've been to the East a few times when I was young, and I think I've tasted it before. Its name, Cantate. It was an impressive middle-aged man with a beautifully grown mustache. Ah, Eastern food is a delicacy. I couldn't forget the taste, so I often remembered it. I never thought I'd taste it again at Pellet Corporation's banquet. Ha 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 ha. After that, the nobles began to taste the food more aggressively. The food was different from the usual banquet, where people ate and only enough not to be hungry. I also tasted the food one by one, mixed among such people. It was a seafood dish with a very impressive sour, sweet, and spicy taste, unlike the bland Empire food as a whole. Then a cool river breeze blew. A lady next to me, who was also eating one by one, said as if she was dreaming. She were dreaming. I wish I could go to the east. I looked around. Not only the lady, but there seemed to be many people who thought alike. And as if waiting for that atmosphere to ripen, Clarivan stepped onto the podium on the ship. This time, father and Avenox were together. Lord Gallihan Lombardi, who's next to you? Isn't that young man the representative of the Eastern Lord of Luman? People looked up at the podium with curious eyes. Do you like the banquets especially prepared by our Pellet Corporation? When asked by Clarivan, people laughed and lifted glasses in their hands. Some of you may have noticed first, but what's being served is Eastern food. It's a very special dish that you can't find in the center or anywhere else in the empire. Special, the words sparkled the eyes of the nobility. Clarivan continued after a short pause, probably to calm down. With the help of the young lord, Avinox Luman, I came across the great food and culture of the East and thought I wanted to share it with more people. And the answer was found in Cheshire Estate. Clarivan, my father, and Avinox greeted each other politely in public. It was to show that they were a partner and a related person in this business. A week later, the port of Cheshire opens. It opens the waterway from the inland to the east, and right from Cheshire, our Pellet Corporation's Eastern Cruise Tour will begin. As soon as Clarivan finished his speech, two of Pellet Corporation staff climbed up to the podium with large frames. It was a picture of a large ship with a panoramic view, a huge high-end ferry about 10 times the size of the ship you're on will take you safely and comfortably to the east. A comfortable trip to the east. Besides, it was the finest ferry they've ever been on. I can see the excitement of the aristocrats who opened their eyes round and whispered to the person next to them. There's only one reason for today's banquet, to select 15 pairs of customers for the historic first cruise in 2 weeks. Of course, all expenses are the responsibility of our Pellet Corporation, and for those of you chosen, you can simply have to relax and enjoy the 7-day nightly feast and a 2-week trip to the east. Oh, how do you select? A man couldn't stand it and asked loudly. Haha, the way is simple. During today's banquet, the staff of Pellet Corporation with boxes like this will pass by you. Then you can write your name on the card and put it in. The draw will be held at the end of the banquet. People were seen here and there trying to identify the employees. Well, have a good time with great Eastern food and beautiful music. Exciting music flowed back into the ship as Clarivan came down from the podium. The results of a successful presentation are obvious. People rushed into the drawbox, leaving food and alcohol behind. I leaned against the railing of the ship and watched it leisurely. Some even got caught trying to write their name twice and were embarrassed. Then there was a little commotion at the door of the ship. Open the door, I have to get off right now. Viz was shouting threateningly at the staff of the Pellet Corporation. He was just about trying to make money on a Western tour, but Eastern Cruise Tour is better in every way. Viz, whose feet are on fire, is probably trying to run to the Empress, but it can't be. It's dangerous. Please stop, Lord Lombardi. The ship has already departed. Then turn the ship again. As soon as Clarivan started his speech, the ship left the docked river. This is a special gift that I prepared for Viz. It will probably take more than 5 hours. In the meantime, let's ride some shit. Perhaps, during that time, his blood would dry up as he counted the money that Lombardi Construction had not received and his own personal funds invested in Western construction. It's good to see you. Clarivan, who came next to me before I knew it, said, looking at Viz, which became quiet after receiving angry eyes from my grandfather. It's up to you. I replied to Viz by clicking my tongue. Then again, a strong wind blew my hair. It was a refreshing and gentle breeze. Oh, it's cool. A night on ship with a mix of exciting music, business success, and Viz's panic. I closed my eyes again, breathing deeply in the river breeze, and I lifted the glass of champagne in my hand without saying a word. Soon there was a crackling Clarivan. Soon there was a crackling. Clarivan banging his glass into my glass. I took a sip of cold champagne with a smile. Oh, perfect. It's such a beautiful night. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next morning, Perez arrived at Lombardi's mansion and got off the horse. Now, as if the prince's visit was familiar, a servant came out and led Perez's horse to the stable, and the butler of the annex greeted him. What about Tia? Perez raised one eyebrow at the butler's answer. Last night, the onboard banquet ended very late. It was at the request of the nobles who didn't want to get off the ship. The Pellet Corporation banquet has not yet been finished, and Tia could not have returned home first, especially considering Tia's secret that Perez himself found out. So it was surprising that Tia was already up. He was prepared to wait a few hours for her to wake up, but now he didn't have to. Knock knock, Perez was agonizing over the conversation with how will Tia react. No, maybe he should pretend he doesn't know her secret. Wouldn't she want that? Those hesitations filled Perez's head. However, Hi Perez, Tia dressed in a red dress, welcomed him as she sat on the sofa. On the table, he saw tea and cake prepared for two people. Caramel Avenue's delivery box, which Perez is familiar with, was also placed on one side. Tia said, smiling at him, Welcome, I've been waiting for you, Perez. End of chapter 163. Chapter 164. The day you sold the building? It was the day when I disposed of the last remaining building to return to my hometown, so I barely remember it. What do you want to know? Sitting deep in his armchair, Green Barrow murmured, stroking his beard at Lignite's question. What's unusual about it? Yes, there was one thing. A child followed him to the place where he was paying the last balance. A child? Yes, it was a girl who looked about 10 years old. She paid the balance instead of the man who bought the building with the gold in a big bag. Now that I think about it again, it was really unusual. Green Barrow grinned. Gulp, swallowed dry saliva. Lignite asked in a trembling voice, Do you remember anything about the girl? Like her appearance, her name? Well, if you ask someone like me, that's other than the small size and the way she talks. Green Barrow, who had blurred his words, tapped his knees and said, Oh yeah, she had green eyes and a red ribbon on her head. Yes, my memory is still not dead. Perez looked up and down at Tia, who was sitting across from him, as he recalled the conversation with Green Barrow, who he had heard from Lignite. What kind of cake do you want? I'm craving for chocolate, but I'm willing to give way if you want to eat it, Perez. Dressed in her favorite red dress, she was leisurely talking about the cake. Tia. Huh? How did you know that I'm coming to see you? Perez's question stopped Tia's bustling movement. You're coming to the mansion early in the morning. It's like the day you were leaving for the academy alone. I just thought you'd do it this way, and Tia replied with a smile, because you have a reason to rush to see me. So how did you find out my secret? I'm sorry, I apologize. At Perez's apology, Tia shrugged and spoke in a light voice. No, there's nothing to apologize for. It's the same for you and me. No, I might be disappointed with you if you couldn't figure it out. Tia smiled softly at the end of the sentence. And if you apologize, I get stubbed a lot, Perez. Then she poured the tea into the teacup in front of Perez. Now ask me. I'll answer you with all my conscience. Even at Tia's words, Perez remained motionless for a while. He just stared at her. It was because Tia felt strange today. Nothing changed, but it was like looking at someone else. Perez slowly took off his lips and asked in a low voice, Tia, are you the real owner of the Pellet Corporation? A smile smudged on her face when Perez was questioned. And Tia replied, Yes, that's right. I'm the real owner of Pellet Corporation. From the beginning. Yes, from the beginning. Pellet Corporation was founded 8 years ago. Tia was only 11 years old at the time. At the same time, the puzzle that was divided into pieces seemed to be put together. From diamond mine to Triva trees and recent Eastern cruise tour operations, he got goosebumps all over his body. Perez instinctively buried his face in his hands. He could feel the beating heart and the muscles of his whole body, and, as expected, it was you. The corners of Perez's mouth loosened and Dark laughed in his hands. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. If Bate hadn't rushed with his delivery bag at dawn and informed that Lignite Lumen had visited the former owner of the pellet building, I would have been raided without knowing anything. I swallowed a sigh of relief under my smiling face, but it's not over yet. I can't see Perez's reaction because he was covering his face with his hands. Do you feel betrayed? Are you getting angry? I knew Perez would notice one day, but what he thought was the most important thing. If something like this happens, makes our relationship go wrong, befriend with the future prince and get help in becoming the Lord of Lombardy, and change the future of the family that was ruined by standing in the wrong line in the struggle for the throne. There could be a major setback in one of the most important goals that I set as soon as I return. Though the relationship between me and the guy won't be that bad at all. At last, Perez looked up. He had a blank face, but fortunately, he didn't seem angry. Perez asked me, "Do you happen to know my secret?" Well, it would be fair to say something I know about him. I replied with a nod. The monarch top, you knew it? It was a great move to push the Empress and Anjanus with the Triva tree, Perez. I know the future, so I thought I bought Triva wood aggressively. Perez purely read the Empress movements to predict the future. What a piece of work. I can't help but admire Perez's smart head every time. Then the Pellet Corporation, did you pile up Triva trees because you knew there would be a landslide? I shrugged and said, "We have a lot of mines over there." I listened to the experts. I'm sorry, Perez. I can't say I know the future by the return from my previous life. Even with the same tree, Perez, you stopped the Empress purse strings and took economic advantage, and I was just a little more politically motivated. Perez's red eyes stared at me. It was a calm eye, contrary to what I feared. I said, looking face to face without avoiding those eyes. But if you and I had worked together in the first place, we could have done more achievements. More achievements. Perez murmured quietly and asked, "What's your purpose, Tia?" Purpose? There are parts that I don't quite understand because the goal is to simply increase the pellet corporation market. Ah, I nodded, and after a short breath, I answered, "I will be the matriarch of Lombardy, Perez." The sound of words coming out of my mouth is thrilling, and in order to do so, I will continue to help you become the crown prince and take revenge. But Perez's reaction was a little strange. He looked at me with a stiff face. The red eyes were shaking finely. Oh, is it because of what I just said? It was a misleading remark. Of course, I'm not saying I'm going to use you for my benefit. The reason why I'm helping you, Perez, you're my friend. Use me. What? When I asked again, Perez slowly rose from his seat and came right next to me. Use me, Tia. Perez said so and took my right hand. Perez's slightly rough hand went down long along the sensitive skin on the inside of my arm. Shrug. The sound of touching flesh echoed in the quiet room. Perez, you can use me. This time, Perez's thumb rubbed the back of my hand with blue veins in a circular motion. 10 times or 100 times, as much as you want. The red eyes looking at me as if burning me, and slowly pulled the back of my hand. No, please use me. Oh, the breath that leaked between Perez's lips felt stark on the back of my hand. And eventually, his hot lips touched the back of my hand. His other hand dug into my left hand and clipped it tightly. Perez did not stop there. He put his lips down at every knuckle, as if to claim ownership, and his eyes never fell off me during the process. Perez, who seemed to be performing a sacred ceremony, kissed the back of my hand one last time and spoke in a low voice. "So I can help you, Tia." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Empress Rabini smiled a deeper smile to contain the anger that rose to the top of her head. "Good tea scent, Empress. I'm glad you like it, Lord of Susu." By the way, Chanton Susu took a long time, but the Empress already knew the next word to come out of his mouth. "Is it because of Pellet Corporation's business, Lord of Susu?" "You've already heard. That's right. Is the Western tour of Angenes okay?" "It doesn't a problem. Thank you for your concern. But cruise sounds pretty fascinating. Besides, the East has a mild and warm climate all year round. It would be perfect for a destination. Lord of Susu, who the hell is this guy making fun of?" Ravini, who was about to burst out, quickly shut up at the words of Chanton Susu. "Will you be able to keep the payment date, Empress?" That's Anjanas was in a state of enormous debt to Susu. Her anger subsided and the awareness returned. I wish I could delay the payment. The attitude of the solicitor was too stiff, but Rabini was very proud. If Susu didn't delay the payment date, Anjanas wouldn't have the ability to pay the debt right away. So this is the way it should be. There must be a blow to Western tourism as well. Chanton Susu nodded and said as if tossed, "I'll lend you more funds if you want, Empress." Ravini doubted her ears, but the ensuing Lord of Susu proved that she had not misheard. "We've already invested money in Western businesses, so we're going to lose a lot of money if we step down. Plus, I think you'll need more money to compete with the Eastern Cruise business in the future, isn't it? It would be a great help, Lord. Rabini's face was brighter. It bothered her that she was going to have a bigger debt, but Chanton Susu was right. If she stops here, all she has left is debt. She had to do something more. It was a ray of light for Angenis now. Chanton Susu, staring into the eyes of sparkling Empress Rubini, said, "But this time, we're going to need collateral." A collateral? In the meantime, Angenis borrowed money from Susu after spending only one certificate. It was like a credit loan from a bank. No matter how much I own it, I need something to show to the people of the Susu family. I'm sure the Empress will understand my position. Well, of course, collateral. Rabini was thinking of borrowing more money than last time, so something of similar value was needed. At that time, Chanton Susu suggested troubled Empress Rabini. How about the land near the lands of Angenas, which you handed over to Susu last time? Are you asking me to hand out the land document? It doesn't have to be a good agricultural or valuable land. I know there are quite a few of the lands in Angenas. Chanton Susu explained in a calm voice. Anything I need to show to the people of the family, especially Madame Susu, it's all collateral for one of our own, for one of your own, and Lord of Sisu said, shaking his head. What would Sisu with a vast granary use with the land documents of Angenas? It made sense. There was no guarantee as certain as the document of the estate, and as Chanton Sisu said, the land of Angenas was not worth much. There was no guarantee as certain as the document of the estate, and as Chanton Susu said, the land of Angenas was not worth much to be greedy for the Susu family. I just suggested it because I wanted to give the Empress and Angenas another chance. If you feel pressure, I would also like to pay off the debt and close the contract according to the existing promise. Chanton Susu smiled and asked the Empress, "What do you want, Empress?" Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It has already been 3 months since cruise tours began. There have been many changes in the meantime, especially in my safe. I have so much money that I'm worried about where and how to invest and spend more. There were two main ways in which money came in. One was the money directly earned by Pellet Corporation through the Eastern Cruise Tour business. It was a large sum of money paid by aristocrats for cruise trips and profits from selling ship carrying goods to the east with tourists. And the other was the Cheshire port fee to share with my father. In fact, I was surprised that the latter was much larger than the former. As such, the Cheshire estate was developing at a rapid pace. To put it bluntly, the Cheshire estate belongs to my father, and I am his only child and only heir. I might be making more money than I thought. For the past 3 months, I've been busy stabilizing the Eastern Cruise Tour business. Oh my God, now the cruise tour began to take care of itself, and from today I declared to Claravan that I would live a leisurely life again, and I was on my way home. I'm going to sleep tomorrow. I'm not getting out of bed until my back hurts. It was when I was walking up the stairs towards my room, muttering like that. Who? Sob. There was a very sad and creepy sound heard from above. The sound of a woman crying. I stepped up the stairs carefully, and I could see someone crouching in front of my room crying. What are you doing here? Why are you crying? Tia. Oh, since when has she been crying? Lorraine's face was a mess with tears. Lorraine, who began to cry more sadly at me, said with a trembling voice, Hicks, marriage, it was decided. I don't know what to do, Tia. End of chapter 164. Chapter Chapter 165. First, I brought Lorraine into the mansion. Drink this, Lorraine. Wipe off the tears. Drink this, Lorraine. Wipe off the tears. Okay. Lorraine, who was already shedding tears with her swollen red eyes, seemed about to collapse. Thank you, Tia. Lorraine's fingers were shaking lightly as she accepted the cup I handed her. Tell me if you've calmed down a little. Are you getting engaged? Yes, perhaps. Lorraine's long lashes trembled with a small sigh. I overheard a conversation between my mother and father a little while ago. I think it's over to some extent. It's an engagement that the person concerned doesn't know. It sounds ridiculous, but unfortunately it is common in the empire. Especially the more powerful noble families are, the most comfortable and good way to protect their power is to marry their children. Of course, if you care about your children, you can permit them to get married or give them the right to decide before marriage. Such expectations are a luxury for Viz and Cyril. What do you want to do, Lorraine? I asked carefully. I am. Oh, damn it. Lorraine's tears, which had stopped, began to flow again. I handed over my handkerchief quietly. Lorraine, who was silently wiping away tears, said, I thought this day would come one day. I've been learning it since I was young. Someday I have to marry someone my parents decide. Unlike her sad face, Lorraine's tone was calm. But then, I met Sir Avenox. I knew I could be so happy just by being with someone, so I was going to tell my parents about Sir Avenox. Lorraine squeezed the handkerchief. My father and mother were very happy. My marriage will be of great help to my father. Lorraine, it would be useless to tell them that I don't want to get married. Laughing blurrily, Lorraine looked so small today. What should I do? Because I feel sorry for Sir Avenox. It's going to be a big shock. He's more tender-hearted than he looks. It was then that Lorraine's face, which seemed calm at first glance, like a resigned person, was distorted. Tears flowed faster, as if they were bursting with emotion, as she recalled Avenox. But I really don't want to marry anyone other than Sir Avenox. Tia, if it's not him, I don't want to. I gave Lorraine a big hug, and I waited, sweeping her back until her crying ceased. In the meantime, I was able to feel the conflict of Lorraine clearly. The thought is that she was to go on a set path for her family and want to be with the person she loves. How painful it must be to not be able to choose one of those two things or abandon the other. The trembling body of Lorraine was speaking. I said to Lorraine, who was calming down a little and wiping away tears. For now, no matter what happens, wouldn't it be better to convey Lorraine's heart to Sir Avenox? Can I do that? Wouldn't it be careless? Sir Avenox would rather be worried about Lorraine, and this kind of thing is bound to spread quickly. I think it's better for you to say it yourself than to let people know by gossip. Tomorrow, then, what should I do? Lorraine realized something and stamped her feet. Tomorrow is the day of the reading meeting with Sir Avenox, but I think my mother is thinking of taking me to a marriage meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow, it was so fast. Usually, when a family gets married, they adjust the conditions one by one over time. It is literally a marriage made like a contract. Perhaps the details have already been saying. Then, all that remains was to make an official announcement. As Tia said, the rumor will have spread by tomorrow. The meeting place is the capital, right? Yes, it's Caramel Avenue in Sedacuna. It's kind of coincidental, right? I can't believe the place was there again. I nodded and said to Lorraine, Lorraine first writes a letter to Sir Avenox. I'll go to the book club and deliver it to him tomorrow. Really? Thank you so much, Tia. Lorraine gave me a big hug. Oh my, she's not usually like this. It seemed that she was very worried about Avenox. Then I'll be right back and write you a letter. Wait a minute, Tia. Lorraine leaped out of her seat. I asked in a sudden curiosity as I saw Lorraine off. But who's your opponent? In my previous life, Lorraine married a cousin of Lord of Ivan in the north. Ivan's vassal and Migente Ivan's cousin, to be exact. Perhaps it was the Empress's arrangement to secure votes in the north. I don't think it's him again. I should have buried him when I went to Ivan. Lorraine said to me, muttering so inwardly. Your Highness First Prince. Excuse me, the First Prince? What? Who? Your Highness First Prince. I didn't hear it wrong. I grabbed the back of my neck that was getting stiff. Ha! I was going to sublimate the boiling anger with a deep sigh, but I can't believe it. Cyril, Viz, you're both crazy. How dare they bring a dog like Astana to Lorraine? Looking at Lorraine, who was still neat and beautiful, although her eyes are red and swollen, I solemnly declared, this marriage, I'll stop it. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. At the same time, Emperor Jovanes and Empress Rubini met face to face after a long time. Jovanes, who could not take a nap because of this schedule, yawned loudly. Why did you ask to see me face to face, Empress? Shouldn't we celebrate together, Your Majesty, because the marriage of the first prince is going well? Marriage? Jovanes frowned. Are you talking about connecting Viz Lombardi's daughter and Astana? Yes, her mother is also my cousin, and they are very happy to be in-laws with the imperial family, so marriage is going smoothly. So she is Astana's cousin, isn't she? Under imperial law, more than an uncle can marry. Cousins often get married. Cough. Jovanes had an uncomfortable cough. There's no way the Lord of Lombardy would agree to that. Marriage, a union between families, ultimately requires permission from the Lord, and Jovanes knew Lulak's personality well. How terrible is the love for the blood and flesh of that stubborn man is. Empress Rabini sneaked a glance at Jovanes and said, It's nothing else, it's a national marriage. Everything should be done according to your majesty's will. But rejecting an imperial marriage is clearly crossing the line, no matter how Lombardy is, unless they disregarded the authority of the imperial family and His Majesty. Isn't that right, Your Majesty? It should be. Jovanes nodded. Empress Rubini, who smiled inwardly at the scene, added another word. These days, Lombardy has opposed the imperial development of iron mines and said it was a headache. Emperor Jovanes wanted to make money by developing a huge iron mine owned by the imperial family. However, it was obvious that the iron market, which was already saturated, would be released further and the price of iron would fall further. This was why Lulak Lombardy has expressed widespread opposition to Jovane's plan. As the Lord of Lombardy comes out like that, the number of nobles following it was considerable, so even the emperor cannot help but notice. If the imperial family and Lombardy had in-laws in this situation, Lombardy would no longer be able to stand against it. Jovane's ears were tempting. If it's Viz's daughter, it will be even more useful on days when he became the Lord of Lombardy. I'm so glad You know what I mean. Empress Rubini smiled beautifully, and she poured her favorite liquor before Jovan's as she said, You don't have to decide right now. Talk to the Lord of Lombardy tomorrow. Your Majesty, surprisingly, you may not object it too much. Of course, Lulak Lombardi will jump. She has asked Cyril not to tell anyone in the Lombardi family about this. Not It was already decided how the old man, who usually belittled the imperial family and did not like Astana, would react to sudden marriage, and that would touch Jovan's pride. Empress Rubini smiled secretly. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Jingle, with a small bell, I entered Caramel Avenue. It was full of the sweet and delicious smell unique to the dessert shop. It wasn't enough to soothe me today. Welcome, customer. Maybe today is a working day at the store, but Bate approached me with a smile and said hello. Are you one? I heard there's a book club here today. I answered Bate with a grin, showing a small collection of poems in my hand. Why are you looking at my face? Reading club. I'll take you to the second floor. Bate and I started climbing the stairs together. Who is it? Bate asked with his low voice. What? The one who made Lady Florentia so angry. I don't know who it is, but I think I should take time for mourning in advance. I'm not mad. Look in the mirror and say, I got goosebumps looking on your smiling face. Look at this, said Bate, rubbing his goosebumps arm between his shirt. In the meantime, we arrived on the second floor and I pretended to look around and asked, Avinox Luman, where is he? Ah, it's because of Lady Lorraine's marriage. Bate clicked his tongue and pointed up with his finger. Young Lord Luman is alone on the terrace on the third floor. Just looking at the expression, I felt like he would jump down, so I wanted to give it another seat. But there seemed to be someone waiting separately, so I gave it. Really? That's good. I grabbed my dress hard and said, climbing the stairs again. Then make sure no one enters the third floor at terrace from now on. Okay. At the end of the sentence, I glanced at Bate, who clicked his tongue, saying, Oh, tick, 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 and I came up at the door to the third floor. Fortunately, there weren't many people on the third floor. As Bates said, Avinox was on the terrace. The book of poems, which is the theme of the reading group, was thrown away on the table while sighing completely. Though he looked up at the sky wistfully, I don't see that in my eyes right now. I went out on the terrace and immediately closed the door behind my back. Creaks. At the sound, Avinox turned his head and his eyes were round as he recognized me. And I wielded the collection of poems in my hand. Poke. Avinox's shoulder, hit by the book, shook greatly. Lady Florentia. That's why you should have proposed to Mary earlier. I told you to express it like that. When I saw the blonde hair and the gentle face shining under the sun, I felt how well Avenox looked with Lorraine, making me angry. Take responsibility. What? Our Lorraine, take responsibility. End of chapter 165.